Jide, a young boy and the only son of Chief Badmus, has a sister named Kemi. Jide is the first child of Chief. Chief and his now late wife were longtime lovers. They dated right from when they were in secondary school until they eventually got married. Her name was Bolu. She was a true epitome of beauty. She loved Badmus so much that people envied their love. They were married for a very long time, and having children seemed to be a very big problem. Her mother-in-law gave her so much headache, always threatening to bring in a second wife into their family. But that did not get to Badmus, as he loved his wife dearly. Since the doctors had certified that they were both medically okay, he chose to wait on God. There was no place Bolu did not go. Different pastors, different native doctors, just so they could conceive, but it wasn't working. She had drunk so many concussions given to her, but nothing seemed to work. Even going out at midnight to pray while breaking eggs so the gods would find her worthy and bless her with a child, but nothing was working. She was in church one day when a preaching touched her heart, and she realized that when it's your time, God will locate and bless you, and no one will stop the blessing. During the period of her being restless and doing whatever it took to get a child, she had a little falling out with her husband, and he wasn't happy. But after she realized what she was doing, she and Badmus' bond became stronger, and she never let the words of strangers and her mother-in-law ever get to her again. Not long after, she took in, and their joy knew no bounds. They kept the news from almost everyone, so no one would hurt her or the child. She carried the pregnancy gracefully. It was also discovered that she was carrying twins, a boy and a girl. It made their joy even more. They refused to tell anyone about the babies until she was close to having them. Then she started having complications. She started going in and out of the hospital, being placed on bed rest. They kept telling them that they might lose the baby, but Bolu was relentless and refused to have anything harm her children. She once told the doctor that if it came to picking between her life and that of her kids come first. Let that be the wonderful mark she leaves on earth before she goes. But her husband would always quiet her and say nothing would happen to them, and that if it came to her and the kids, he would definitely pick her, as the God who made her pregnant could always make her pregnant again. She would cry and ask God not to let anything bad happen to her children. One day, her blood pressure went up and they had to rush her in for surgery. Her personal doctor was out of town, so another had to step in for her. The conclusion was to get the babies out, and this happened very late at night. The surgery was successful and the babies survived, though they had to go to the NICU. Bolu stitched up and placed to rest and recover, as she was always going to see her kids. After she was allowed to start eating a few days later, they noticed she hadn't farted nor poo, and she had been complaining of abdominal pains. They told her it was normal, and she kept enduring. Almost a week later, her doctor returned and saw she was pale. She complained and he said it wasn't that normal. He asked the nurses if any doctor had done anything about it, and she replied saying they had been swamped with work. He asked for an x-ray, and it was revealed that a foreign object was inside her, and she was bleeding internally. Her doctor shouted and an emergency was booked to take the object out. She held her husband's hand and told him she loved him and that he should ensure that nothing ever happened to their children. She said she loved him so much. When the doctor was in the emergency room, after she was cut open again, blood was gushing out of her, and they kept trying to curtail it. The object had caused a lot of damage, and they tried their hardest to control it, but it wasn't working. And not long after, she gave up the ghost. Badmus thought his world had ended. He wanted to sue the hospital for their negligence and the way they handled Bolu's surgery. As if that had not happened, she would still be alive. That was the darkest moment of Badmus' life. He wondered if maybe they hadn't pushed for having kids, she would still be alive. He wanted to hate the kids as he saw them as the people responsible for taking away the life of his precious wife, but he could not, as her last words always came to his mind. He did not want his wife and her corpse to be dragged around because of a stupid hospital, and no matter the justice he sought, it would never bring back his loved one. He decided to let his sweet precious Bulu rest in peace. Chief Badmus' mom was very happy she was now a grandmother. Very sad she lost her daughter-in-law, but her grandchildren were of much importance to her. She offered to raise the kids for the meantime, while he put himself in order. He employed help to assist his mother with the twins, and he grieved for what seemed like a very long time that her 1-year remembrance came very fast. Just after her 1-year remembrance, Chief Badmus' mom asked him to look for another woman to settle with. He told his mom he was not interested in settling down with another woman, that his true love was gone and never coming back. His mother told him that the kids, Jide and Kemi, needed a mother figure in their lives, and that it was becoming very difficult for her to handle them alone. He told his mom he could hire extra help if that was the issue. She told him no, that he should find a nice lady to settle down with, or she could help him find someone. He was very adamant, as he had already made up his mind. His mother turned this into constant nagging, urging him to settle with another woman. One evening, over drinks with his friends, he discussed the matter, and they also agreed with his mom. They told him that he couldn't cook, clean, and take care of the kids alongside running his business. They reminded him that kids are very stressful and shouldn't be left in the care of his mom alone. Besides, it has been almost 2 years since he lost his wife, and they assured him he wouldn't be doing anything wrong by remarrying. He reasoned with his friends and understood where they were coming from. Besides, he thought he needed more kids, as he knew he was capable of taking care of them. He decided to give it a serious thought, hoping it would be for the best of his kids. At least they would be closer to him than being in the village with his mom. But the more he tried to look at other women, the more difficult it was. His mom kept pressuring him, and he begged her to please give him some time to find someone suitable who would love his kids because they were super important to him. His mom decided to hasten things by bringing different ladies and asking him to make his pick. But he did not like anyone presented to him by his mom. His friends even tried to introduce him to some of their still single friends, but he turned them down. They all thought he wasn't taking them seriously. One day, he went to the supermarket and met a very beautiful lady. Her name was Stella. Badmus walked up to her and introduced himself, and from that, a relationship started between them. Stella was a single mom of 2, just like Chief Badmus. She had a son and a daughter and was separated from her ex-husband, as she had been in an abusive relationship. Chief instantly clicked with her because she could understand him better. And what better woman for his kids than a mother herself? They started courting, going out and having fun like teenagers, and they were very happy in each other's company. Not long after, Badmus introduced Stella to his mom, and she was excited. However, when she heard Stella was a single mom, everything changed. Even Badmus noticed it. He asked his mom if everything was alright, and she pretended nothing was wrong, not wanting to give away how she truly felt. But when Stella took her leave, his mom lashed out at him, asking why he would bring someone like her into their home. She said Stella was already a baggage and she couldn't let her settle down in the family. A serious argument broke out between Badmus and his mom. He told her, "All these years, I allowed you to mess around with my late wife and all the troubles you put her through. But as for Stella, I will marry her. If you're not careful, I will stop you from visiting my home." He said all this and walked away from her. Mrs. Badmus was so surprised, as her son had never shown such behavior before. She wondered what had changed with him. She tried manipulating him into begging her, but it wasn't happening. Stella continued visiting the house, and her presence frustrated Mrs. Badmus. No matter the threat Mrs. Badmus dished out, her son's mind was already made up. She couldn't stand their love blossoming and went back to the village. Not long after, wedding preparations began. Stella accepted Badmus' proposal, which he made in the presence of his friends. They both agreed to a small wedding, which was fine, given it wasn't their first wedding. The wedding went well, and not long after, Stella and her kids moved into the house. She treated Badmus' kids, Jide and Kemi, well at first, maintaining a good relationship with them. However, she began assigning more tasks to Jide and Kemi while allowing her kids to do very little. Badmus' mother had warned Stella that the day she maltreated Jide and Kemi would be the day she left her son's house. Stella got the message clearly, as the kids were still in communication with their grandmother, and she didn't want to get on her bad side. Both Badmus and Stella decided not to have more kids, agreeing that the 4 they had were enough and they should focus on training them to their full capacity. Badmus accepted Stella's children, Wole and Moyo, as his own. Jide and Kemi were younger than Wole and Moyo by a few years. A few years later, Badmus lost his mom. It was a dark period in his life, as he truly loved his mother. Even though they hadn't agreed on him marrying Stella, Stella and his mother never saw eye to eye until her death. Her passing was a relief to Stella, as she no longer had anyone antagonizing her or watching her every move to accuse her of doing something wrong. Stella felt at home now. Not long after, the burial date was fixed and Badmus laid his mother to rest. That period, he felt so broken, like a huge part of him had left, and he was now alone, an orphan. Stella comforted him greatly during this time. However, without wasting time, she changed the chore roster, giving Jide and Kemi more work to do, while her children did virtually nothing, even though they were older. Whenever Jide and Kemi tried to complain, Stella would shout at them. If they addressed her as mom, she would yell back, "Who is your mom, please? Go and meet her in the grave. You have no one to protect you now, and your father won't believe you. If you report me, I will starve you in this house." She gave them a very sharp and strict warning that sent shivers down their spines. That day marked a turning point in their lives, changing everything forever. To make things worse, their father became very distant. If Jide or Kemi asked for anything, he would direct them to their stepmother, making it very hard for them. Their dressing changed as Stella bought the best clothes for her own children, while Jide and Kemi looked unkept. She stopped feeding them well, and it seemed that though she was starving them. Badmus' friends noticed this and asked him why his children were looking so shabby, while the children of another man in his house looked well-fed and well-dressed. They reminded him, "Yes, you are grieving, but you need to put your eyes on your children because they are all you truly have. When you pass, everything you work for should go to your children. You can't raise another man's children while your own suffer." Badmus gave this a lot of thought and decided to put his grief aside and monitor his children. One day he returned from work and found his own kids seated on the floor of the dining room eating what looked like leftovers, while Stella's children sat at the dining with big plates of food. He asked Jide what was going on, and Jide explained that for over 2 weeks, this had been their condition. He said Auntie doesn't give us meat anymore. Badmus became angry and shouted for Stella to come to the dining room. She was shocked and asked what the matter was. He asked why his kids were seated on the floor, eating such a miserable portion of food. She replied that they had been naughty, wasting the food she gave to them, so she had to give them smaller portions to ensure they finished their food before receiving their meat. She added, "Their meat is in the pot." He then asked why they were seated on the floor. She said she had nothing to do with that, claiming once she gave them their food, she went upstairs to rest. Jide and Kemi chorused, "It's a lie!" and Stella shot them a stern look. Badmus asked Stella to meet him in their room. When they got there, he expressed his displeasure with how the kids looked malnourished and how poorly dressed they were. He wondered that if he noticed his children being maltreated again, their marriage would end. He added, "Just because I defended you before my mother doesn't mean I won't take her advice. Even in her death, don't play with my kids. If you do, I will stop paying your kids' school fees and taking care of them." Stella was shocked and said, It hasn't come to that. I will do better. Please, I am sorry. Badmus accepted her apology, but decided to keep a close eye on her to ensure she didn't stray. He also asked his friends whose child attended the same school to keep him informed about Jide and Kemi or their experiences. Stella kept a low profile for a while but remained annoyed and agitated, wondering what was so special about Jide and Kemi. Years passed and Stella grew older as did the kids, who were now teenagers. Stella refused to let Jide and Kemi call her mom, avoiding them to stay out of trouble. Stella had become envious over the years, realizing that her son, who was older than Jide, wouldn't inherit anything unless she intervened. She knew her husband hadn't drafted a will and she began plotting. A few days later, Chief Badmus was involved in an armed robbery attack and lost his life in the process. The family went into mourning after the death of Chief Badmus. It was a very sad loss. Stella cried her eyes out, lamenting for her late husband and wondering who would comfort her now that he was gone. She wept bitterly as people tried to console her and the kids, but it seemed nothing could soothe her grief. Not long after, Chief Badmus' rites were performed and he was laid to rest. However, his death marked the beginning of the downward spiral for the family, particularly for Jide and Kemi. Stella turned their lives into living hell. They became like maids overnight. Jide and Kemi were preparing to take the exams, which their late father had already paid for. But Stella frustrated their efforts to attend school, hoping they would fail. Her children, Wole and Moyo, had consistently failed the exams, and Stella didn't want Jide and Kemi to surpass them academically. Rumors started flying around about Stella's heartless behavior. Badmus' friend, Uncle Kule, eventually stepped in. He took Jide and Kemi away from Stella so they could focus on their studies, promising to return them after their exams. Stella gave them dirty looks, but Jide and Kemi, determined not to risk their future, left with Uncle Kule. In the serene environment provided by Uncle Kule, they wrote their exams and felt relieved, knowing they had performed well. However, they had no choice but to return to Stella, as Uncle Kule was leaving the country and couldn't take them along. When they arrived home, Stella laughed mockingly and said, "Why did you return? You should have stayed with Uncle Kule since he's your savior. Don't worry, I'll teach you both a lesson you won't forget in a hurry. You think you can leave and come back after tarnishing my image? Don't worry, everything will be alright." From that day, life became even worse for Jide and Kemi. Without their father, there was no one to protect them. Stella's constant beating and torture became unbearable. One day, she looked Jide in the eye and said, "I will kill you one day." Not long after, Stella sent Kemi away to live as a maid for a wealthy woman, collecting monthly pay that was supposed to be for Kemi's services. Stella pocketed the money and left Kemi with no access to it. One day, Jide returned home late after running an errand for Stella. As he tried to explain why he was late, she picked up a sharp stick and began spanking him mercilessly, shouting, "I will kill you today." After the brutal beating, she told her son Wole to hold him down as she picked up a knife. She attempted to stab him but kept missing vital spots. Finally, she managed to injure him in one area, bleeding heavily. Jide ran outside. Neighbors saw him and quickly rushed him to the hospital. They tried to get Stella arrested, but it turned out she had bribed her way out of trouble and was almost untouchable. After some time, Jide recovered. A kind young man took him in and raised him as his own. Meanwhile, Stella reunited with her abusive ex-husband and moved him into the house she had shared with Badmus. Together, they lived with their very spoilt children, Wole and Moyo. Wole became a hardened criminal, while Moyo turned to prostitution. Years later, Kemi, though living with a very good boss, managed to finish school and secure a good job. One day, a very handsome man approached her, and to her surprise, it turned out to be her brother Jide. He had grown into a very successful man, wealthy and accomplished. Jide had studied law and spent years abroad, but had now returned to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Jide went to their father's home with some police officers, only to find Stella and her now husband in a heated argument. The bullies broke up the fight and read Stella her rights. She was arrested for attempted murder and for orchestrating the murder of Chief Badmus. Her husband was also arrested. The police escorted them both to the jail. Jide took the case to court, presenting well-preserved evidence. He had tracked down the men who had killed his father, and they confessed to being hired by Stella. With all necessary documents and testimonies, Stella and her husband were sentenced to life imprisonment for the involvement in the robbery and death of Chief Badmus. Their children, Wole and Moyo, faced their own tragic ends. Wole died during a robbery operation, while Moyo, used for rituals by one of her clients, was left to roam the streets mad. Jide and Kemi moved back into their father's house and renovated it. During the renovation, they discovered a letter written by their late mother. It read, "My dear children, I write this without knowing whether I will survive to see you because the doctor gave me sad news I refused to share with your dad, as I know what his stance would be. But if bringing you into this world is all I can do, then I have done the best thing in this world. I just want you to know that I love and adore you both so much, and I never regret having you. Know that I will always be by your side to guide you and love you. Take care of your dad. With love, Mom." They both cried because this letter reminded them that they were truly loved, no matter how they had been treated by their wicked stepmother. They hugged, promising to always have each other's back. The end. Lessons to be learned from this story: do not judge a book by its cover. Whatever you sow, you reap. Never treat another person's child with disdain. Thank you so much for listening and watching to the end. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please go ahead and give me a thumbs up as it helps me grow. Leave a comment on what you learned about this story or your opinion about this story. And I will see you in the next one. Share to your friends and loved ones who this story will touch. And note, this story was actually derived from an actual true story. And I'll see you in the next one. Till then, bye. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Please click on the subscribe button to support us. Turn on the post notification to get notified when I upload a new story. Like, share, and comment your thoughts. Till then, bye.